I've had the chance to work with here at Shoreline, who is now doing a whole plethora of other really important things.
God only knows. Yeah.
And so please say hello to Tyson Morlet.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate being here. Yeah. Also, thank you for calling me young man. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, gray, dark.
Gray, and yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
All right. Well, we have a little pattern that we do here, Tyson, where we talk a little bit about our own story, and then we kind of move into kind of what it is that you advise others to do in terms of keeping themselves strong in the faith, and then maybe some things that you're doing yourself that have been really helpful. So
cool. Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and start with your own story. Where did you grow up? How did that whole thing get started?
Yeah. I just had someone recently actually corner me and say, "Who are you and where did you come from?" So this feels like that a little bit. I grew up in Southern California. It's the San Diego area. And
yeah, it's a rough place to grow up, bro.
Yeah, it was real hard. The beach was so far away. It took us a whole 40 minutes to get there. But when you're a kid, all you got your bike. So whatever, right. You know. But yeah, I mean, you got to back up even a little bit farther than that, though. My mom had me when she was she was pregnant with me at 16, had me at 17.
Whoa.
Yeah. My dad was 24, and they had that crazy lifestyle, man. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. My mom saved me. The abortion was on the calendar. And she,
kidding.
Yeah, for real. And she got out of there and got me safe and took care of me. And so that was kind of the skyrocket of my life. And I think my mom and I probably grew up together at some level.
Yeah.
Her being a young mom, me being, an infant, and so my parents, they were radically saved when I was about 7 years old.
Okay.
So that's when they started dragging me to church. My dad's on the setup team. He went from drinking beers on Sunday to setting up, signs on Sunday. So that's kind of how he rolled. And he just drug us along, and there's free donuts there. So,
yeah.
There was some incentive.
Yes.
And, so I kind of grew up dragged to church. And then about 16 years old, I met a youth pastor who actually was in my life. And he took time and invested in me. And, he really showed me Jesus. And once I met that Jesus, not the Jesus I was setting up and tearing down for, but once I met relational Jesus,
Love it.
I couldn't resist. And so I became a Christian, probably around the age of 16 officially, and officially in my heart anyways.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my youth pastor was like, "Man, we really need a worship leader." I'm like, "What is this that you speak of?" And so I picked up a guitar about the same time and just began doing what I could with it, And so, kind of that journey on both sides began, and, started leading worship at the youth group, and then youth groups turned into multiple youth groups, and then conferences, and then camps, and next thing you know, I'm in full-time ministry doing the worship thing.
So you're doing this all through high school, basically?
Yeah, through the latter part of high school. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
Grade
then
suffer?
grades weren't good. They couldn't. There was nowhere but up to go as it was. So no, we were fine there. And so leading worship became a huge part of my identity. And then when I got out of high school, I'd plan on attending university, and it just was too expensive. And so I ended up at a small Bible college in a place called Marietta, California. And it was in a resort with hot springs, and those 2 years were so foundational to learning the Bible. I mean, they made us read it like 25 times. We had to outline the entire thing multiple times.
When you told me this when we were getting together last time, because there's a reputation, if you've been around the Christian community, there's a reputation of Bible schools as kind of being lightweight, and when you
the easy route, yeah, this was not the easy route.
That was definitely
and I think
hardcore.
I find a lot of worship leaders. I don't want to diss any of my brothers and sisters here, but I find a lot of them don't know the Bible, which is so interesting. We're singing to a God we don't know, and so those couple of years were so foundational in not only putting the scripture in my memory. I think of when Jesus says, "Man, don't worry about what you're going to say when someone asks you something. The things I've said will come to your memory." That is just happening constantly. But I think also it's given me tools to continue study and continue to long for it. I mean, what I learned at that Bible college was not just force-fed the Bible, but I really gained a wonder for it. Like this ancient document, 66 different books, over 40 different authors, over the span of thousands of years, tells one consistent story.
Yeah.
It's wild when you think about it.
Right.
And how did they, this is like better than J.K. Rowling, like talking about the Deathly Hallows in book 1. You're like, what? How did she know? I mean, this is like 40 different authors over millennia of time in different cultures, different languages, and yet telling one consistent story. Also, spoiler alert, sorry about that. Statute of limitations probably passed on Harry Potter by now. But, I think that really gave me a hunger and thirst for the Bible. And then
I just want to just pause on that, because you said something that I think is so important. I just want to put an exclamation point behind it, which is that, the reason that people go to school is not just to gain knowledge and information, but it's to gain a process by which they can engage subject matter.
Yeah.
And so
sure.
at the Bible college, it wasn't just about, getting information, but it was about learning how to study in a way that made sense to your life, how you can give it to other people. So,
yeah.
And that's really what the whole academic exercise is really all about, I think.
Sure. I love that God says in Isaiah, "Come, let us reason together." Like he's right. open to engaging in conversation.
Yep.
And to hear his side of the story, there's this book, to begin that conversation and begin the process of thinking critically about the meaning of life. And why
now,
we
were
find
you
ourselves
headed
here.
to ministry as a result of your studies? Like, were you thinking, okay, I had this experience as a worship leader, as a youth pastor? Were you like, okay, so I'm going to go to Bible school and I'm going to become a pastor?
Yeah, I was convinced I'd be a pastor of a mega church in my teens, and so I out of that school, I ended up applying for a bunch of jobs, and all along my home church is like, why don't you just come back here and do middle school ministry? And I was like, middle school? The Lord has way bigger things for me than middle school. And, the Lord said, no, I don't. Right now, you need to go do that. And that was actually some of the most fruitful ministry experience of my entire life. Watched the youth group grow from, under 10 kids to over 100 kids. And this is at a 200-person church. So, the youth group, when we mob it in on Sunday, like the parents are scared, And, man, it was probably one of the best experiences of my entire life. And
what do you draw, like, when you think back at that time? What were some of the things that God laid in your heart during that period?
Yeah, I think you need a season of God just saying, hey, you've got what it takes.
Yeah.
You've got what it takes, not only to grow something, because blah, 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 who cares about that, but more about, these kids started to, I was waking up wonder in their hearts for who Jesus is. And I was making a God that, is infinite and vast. I was making him known. And I think that you stack up a few of those, man, and they turn into lifelong relationships, by the way. Go to marriages every once in a while, these kids, which is weird. And so thank you for calling me young man. But, I think that, man, God will use those monumental periods of time to establish you in the calling in which he's called you.
That's great.
And you need to put them down as monuments in your heart and mind. And sometimes you're going to have an enemy that comes against you. And they're going to say, you don't have what it takes. You're not called to this. And you need to be able to look back at those monuments and say, no, wait, hold on. I've been here before. Yeah. I know who I am. I know who he says I am. I've seen and tasted. I've seen the fruit. I know what I'm called to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you got out of Bible school and you went back to middle school ministry?
Yeah, middle school ministry. I did that for a couple years, and it was very fruitful, very amazing. I have tons of stories. We could fill stories of thousands of these podcasts. But, I think towards the end of that season, I was just in this pull. And again, trying to figure out who I was. I'm 20 years old at this time. I'd been spending 2 years, teaching the Bible. I was working very, very part-time at the church. I think I started at $250 a month. And I think by the end of it, I had gotten up to $500 a month. Which is not enough to survive, as you probably,
California.
In Southern California. And, I got to hit the beach, a couple times a week.
Yeah.
And so I started doing tile. I was setting tile. And during that 2 years, I was just about ready to go and get my license and all that stuff and become my own tile guy. And so I was kind of pulled in these two directions. And I felt like I wasn't giving the church what she needed, and I wasn't giving my job what it needed. And so I was kind of like, God, what do you want? What do you want? And I'd kind of resigned to myself that it was time to just kind of lay down the minister thing for a while and go do tile and make money and start getting ready to get married and all that stuff. And it was at that time that I met this big, beautiful black man named Sabo Cortez, and he was naming his son to be Tyson. And so we connected right away, of course. He's speaking at a camp. I'm leading worship at a camp. All these kids get saved. And he's like, bro, you got to come lead at my college group. And I was like, okay, yeah, dude, I'm totally down. So I give him my number. Sabo's the kind of guy, like, you give him your number, he's not going to get back to you for months, man, maybe even years. And about 6 months later, right when I'm at the kind of crossroads of deciding which way to go, he gives me a call. Ty, you got to come down. You got to lead in my college group. Okay, cool. So I drive up about 40 minutes up the road, and, you know, my church experience is very limited at this point. I was at the church I got saved in, 200 people. I went to the Bible college, and I went right back to that church. Okay, that's kind of the whole perspective of church. And I walk in this place, and it's like a city. I'm just like, where am I right now? So we go and we lead worship for his college group, a couple hundred kids, and it was electric, just amazing. He's like, keep coming out, keep coming out. So we end up leading out there for a whole month. And then he says, hey, my senior pastor wants to know you. And I was like, okay, cool, yeah. Is there coffee involved, you know? And I go out to coffee with him, and he's like, hey, so what's your story? All right, man, I want to hire you. And I was like, for what? And he's like, I want you to come lead worship here. And I was like, okay, $500 a month, what do you think? And he's like, no, I want to hire you full time. I was like, I didn't even know a job like that existed, you know? And so, you know, I said goodbye to my middle school group, which was very, very difficult, but stepped into this next season. That's where I met my wife, and that's where I learned how to plant churches, and, you know, God was obviously doing some crazy things in and through that.
You have had quite the run, because you've planted, like you said, churches. But
yeah.
You really have. You've planted a couple.
Planted two full churches.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now, we got to go to the story about Shoreline, because you were getting ready to, like, do something again different. And
right.
then a lady spoke to you.
A lady. I hope you're watching this, Monica. Love you.
Said something to you that I like gave me chill bumps when I heard it.
Yeah.
Tell that story.
Yeah, so we were planning a church in Santa Monica, California, which is not recommended, but they really need Jesus if you've got heck of a backbone. And it was 2 very difficult years. Really, I thought I was going to, like, save the city of LA, but God was actually ready to do some humility and stuff like that in my heart, and remind me that he's using me in spite of me, not because of me, and all those great things you need to learn. And ended that season, we were kind of running out of money, and we had more banners than churchgoers is kind of where the church plant was. But our banners looked real good, you know. Our marketing plan was real good. You know, we'd have a pregnant lady, and we'd be like, let's count her for twins, you know, and let's count that in church attendance. That's where we were at. And so it was a hard couple of years, and kind of got to the point where we had no more money, so we have to decide, okay, let's go bivocational. I mean, we already bivocational, so let's go tri-vocational and figure out how to make this work. The church, what they're giving us we're going to have to cut back on that. And I was like, this is radical. This is what Paul would do. Like, let's do it. My wife, on the other hand, was just depressed and crying every day. Didn't like it out there. God surprised us with a baby. You know, we couldn't have babies, so we were like, let's go make the church our baby. Then Symphony came along. And so now we had 2 babies, and we're trying to juggle that. And I just resigned to myself again. I don't know why that phrase is coming up so much, but I resigned in myself that, you know, I was going to keep going. Yeah. Let's put roots down for another year or 2 and just make it happen. And at that point, we got an email from a woman who I used to be her son's youth pastor. And now we have, you know, she's still in our life. Now she's like a mom in our life. Oh, I love it. But so young, more like a sister. And, you know, she sent me this email out of the blue, and it just was basically like, hey, I've heard from the Lord on your behalf. The season you're in now, you need to end it. I see you as one that needs to encourage Joshua and the children of the wandering to cross the shoreline of the Jordan River and to go into the promised land. Those are the words. And I never heard of Shoreline. I had no idea what Shoreline, you know, Shoreline is, you know, it's the Pacific West Coast where I live, you know. And she's like, you need to go east. I don't know what else, but you need to go east. So that was enough to get us to resign. And then we forgot about it. And then I met a guy who, I started putting out applications everywhere,
Yeah.
filling out resumes, doing a bunch of interviews and the whole thing. And, the home church was trying to get me back, which I thought was cool. And so I'm like, you'll probably just end up going back to the home church. And then I met this guy online who was trying to find a electric guitar player, a full-time electric guitar player at this church called Shoreline. And I didn't even realize it then, but I applied for the job and ended up having the interview process. And then it was when we were flying out here is when we opened that email up and it went, oh my gosh, it says Shoreline. What a trip, right? That's insane. And so, yeah, God brought us out here to teach us tons and tons.
Well, I loved what you did while you were here, and I've said this to you before, but I also loved how you departed here. You were honoring, you blessed the church, and I thought it was such a class act that you guys did. You just were amazing.
I've definitely learned that leaving strong and leaving well is a true mark of integrity.
Yeah, well, you did it.
Yeah,
You
thanks,
totally
man.
did it. And so you're now in a new chapter where you've
Yeah.
written a book on
Yep.
marriage.
Yep.
So I want to start talking a little bit about this new
Me
season.
too. I would love to.
Okay, first of all, the book is called Wed to War.
Wed into war.
Wed into
That's
War.
right.
And the first time I saw that title, I was like, all right, he's going to have to explain that one to me. So what was like behind that title?
Yeah. I think that when a lot of people think forward to marriage, they're thinking through a lens of just happy butterflies in the sky, sunshine everywhere, kittens cuddle up to you every day. And my experience has been not that. Really, I feel like marriage is really, it's two people with these childhood wounds, and not only that, but an enemy who's dead set against us, who've been forced to learn independence, and now they're jammed together in 700 square feet, and they're told to be interdependent and try and stay away from codependence, and it's a mess.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't want to write, 7 ways to get your engine revving or do the dishes and she'll do anything. I didn't want to write that book. I feel like that book's already been written.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to write a book that says, this is hard. This is really hard. And not only that, but there's an enemy that's actually dead set against you. And so when you read the Bible, you actually learn that there is some kind of cosmic warfare between God and this created being whom we call the enemy or Satan. And that in the garden, he doesn't even wait till the honeymoon's over to attack that first marriage. And that's the first interaction he has with humanity, is to attack the first marriage. Ultimately asking the question, is God good for bringing this garden to you and this spouse to you? And I think it's the same song and dance today. And if you want to call the enemy an actual physical being, or you want to call it an idea, there's something that makes us more apt to drift than stick.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a war going on.
Yeah. And so we just talked, I guess it was last week when you just finished a conference, and
Yeah.
you're going to be doing that too. So you've written the book, you do these conferences. What's the conference about?
Yeah, so the conference is going through the content, and I'd love to just give maybe a bird's eye view of it real quick. My wife and I have been couples counseling for a long time. We got married literally at the church, invited the whole church to our wedding, which I do not recommend. 700 people showed up, and we had a big old celebration. And just from day one, we understood that our marriage was marked to equip the church. So we ended up couples counseling a lot. Of course, we're leading creatives. Creatives are, they're right-brained, full emotions on full throttle all the time. Yeah. So we started navigating some of these marriages and counseling. And I had this aha moment one time. As I've been sitting with couples, it seems like there was a reoccurring problem. The reoccurring problem is the woman is dragging their man to me saying, will you fix this guy? He's not the spiritual leader I thought he'd be. He's consumed with work. And then he would turn and respond, but babe, this is how I provide for you and the family. I have to go to work to make the money, to make sure you have the things that you need and the things that you want, a roof over your head and food in your belly. That's how I do it. And it was just this constant fight of trying to pull at each other. Yeah. And it was kind of this aha moment that's the Genesis curse. That's what's on like page 3 of this ancient document is the Genesis curse. And it happens to be the fundamental problem in all relationships and ultimately the marriage. Yeah. And that's that the woman desires the role or authority of her husband. She wants to fix him, because of the pain of childbirth. She's fixated on her children, putting her children before her husband. And so she is always trying to fix that man to make him something that can lead her kids. It's like you never hear, someone say, let me grab the kids, or let me grab the husband and leave the kids. No, it's always grab the kids and leave the husband, right? There's a soul tie because of the pain of childbirth. She wants to rule or reign over her husband, but he lords over her. And so you see the subjugation of women and the daughters of Eve since, page 3 of the Bible. And then what's the curse for the man? If the curse for the woman is control, what's the curse for the man? He's so busy at work, you don't even know what's going on at home. Mm. It says, man, by the sweat of your brow and the blood of your fingertips will you bring fruit forth from the ground. Yeah. And then he says, you are dust, that beautiful statement. And in the end, to dust you shall return. Yeah. Man, we go to work. We work 80 hours a week sometimes to provide for this family. And in the end, we find out it was all meaningless. Mm. We just turn right back into the dirt.
Such an
it's page 3.
Thought.
That's why it's called Wed into War, Yeah, so.
No, I get it. It's so, well, and that's one of the things I loved about, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
but,
please.
What you wrote, and I don't remember exactly where I saw it. Maybe it was in one of your marketing pieces, but you said, I wanted to write the book that I needed when I got married.
Yeah, the irony of that is that my wife wrote that statement.
Oh.
She's like, oh, you wanted to write the book that you needed, finally. Yes, there's a great, beautiful irony there.
That's perfect. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so anything more you want to say about what you're doing with the marriages? Because I want to transition to the other part of our conversation, which is how do you help people stay strong?
Yeah, well, I think staying married is a great way
to stay strong.
Yeah, I think that Jesus says this amazing thing that I'd love to unpack just for a few minutes.
Yep.
The Pharisees are trying to trap him, and they come up and they ask him, and they say, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" And this is a trap because the common view of the day is that you could, get rid of your wife if she messed your breakfast up. Mm-hmm. So. They were trying to pin him against the public there. But if he answers that, no, there's no legal reason for you to divorce your wife, then he walks into a trap with the Mosaic covenant, with the Mosaic law, mm-hmm. where he had given reason for divorce. And so Jesus, when he's in these situations, he just...
Masterful.
Oh, yeah. He's the bomb, dude. And so he responds, and he brings us right back to the Genesis account, which I think is so interesting. Yeah. He says that... you should leave your father and mother, cling to your wife, and the two of you will become one. So brings us back to the original design, which I think is so important because that's where the curse is, right? Next, I love in fact, the next phrase is, and they were both naked and without shame, which is the goal, by the way, of all, that's one of the meaning of life, is just to be known and fully known and yet accepted. Yeah. And that's the promise of marriage. But man, we don't see many marriages that exemplify that, unfortunately. And the very next phrase, of course, is, the enemy is more crafty than all of them, kind of thing. So he brings us back to the Genesis account. And of course they respond, but then why then, I have a Pharisee voice, I'm going to try and avoid it. But why then, Jesus? Why then did
all my
Moses...
British friends, I'm sorry.
It's terrible, I know. That's just how they sound in my head. Why then did Moses allow for divorce? And he responds so amazingly. It's because of the hardness of your hearts. And as you study that passage, you realize it's not the hardness of the heart of the person who's committed the adultery, but it's the hardness of heart to forgive. Really interesting. And then he says this, what God has joined together, let no man separate. And we read right over that, right? Because we're just like, where's the line? I need to find the line. But I think what's so amazing about that particular sentence that he says is that he is bringing into mind Yahweh in his omniscience. He has brought you your spouse to entangle and unravel things in and through your soul that you are not even aware of. And you have to understand that when you choose to stay, when you choose to keep fighting for that oneness and that stickiness and that naked and without shame, what you're doing is you're allowing the light of Jesus to shine into the darkest places of your soul that can only be uncovered and excavated through a 60-year relationship, which is why God lets you be single for 20, 30, or so, I'm sorry, guys, if it's 40 years, but then he gives you 50, 60 years to unpack it all, right? That's by design. God has brought you together to do a a soul deep work that only he can do, and he has chosen the spouse to be that light that illuminates of the darkest parts of your soul.
Wow.
And the opposite of that is, what does man bring you? He brought you the job. He brought you the stuff. He brought you the Amazon shopping cart. He brought you the night out with the guy friends or the girls' night out. All these things that we put before our spouse ultimately are they're flesh and blood. Mm-hmm. But the marriage, it's eternal. Yeah. And we know it is. That's why we keep telling Disney stories about it. That's why that's why we have 90 Day Fiance. We're just like, how can we get this thing done? We want to get to Naked and Without Shame. What's the quickest path? I want to watch it. I want to watch it over again and over and over. I want her to take the rose. Why do we care who takes the rose? Because marriage, in these relationships, they're wrought with eternity. And it's like a hole in our heart that only love can fill, and it's because it is eternal, and its purpose is eternal.
Love it.
Yeah. So fight to stay.
Well said. I hope you guys this would be worth watching twice just for that. I mean, seriously.
I think so, but I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I love to hear myself talk. It's a problem. I'm working through it. My God has given me a spouse for 60 years who just says, you're not as great as you think you are.
All right. So one of the things that I'm really curious about these days, and one of the reasons really that prompted this podcast and this live broadcast even, is I want to try and be of help to people who are wanting to stay strong in their faith over the long haul. Yeah. And so I've brought in people that I see doing that and on the road for that. And I'm asking them, okay, so what are you telling people that's helpful, that keeps them on track and out of a ditch? And so I'm curious, I want to ask a 2-part question, and they may be very similar, but one is what are you telling people that will help them stay strong? And then if there's any difference, what is it that's uniquely helping you stay strong?
Sure.
So let's start with the first question. What is it that you find yourself saying to people on a pretty regular basis about staying on track with their faith?
Sure. I think that a lot of times we get sucked into a trap here of trying to market something, trying to sell something. I could say, if you want to keep going, read Wed into War. That would be so easy right now, right, to pivot into something like that. I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous when we're trying to fill a building or fill a seat or fill a budget, and we're using that as a means of bringing people in. I like what Jesus said, actually. Come and see. Come and see. That's what he told Andrew under the fig tree, right? Yeah. You might correct me on that if I'm wrong about who it was, but come and see, I think, is more powerful. And so I'm in this season in my life right now intentionally where I don't have anything going on to invite you to. I got nothing going on that I need you to be at, or that I need you to like on Facebook, or I need you to repost on Instagram. Can you repost on Instagram? I don't even know how these things work, obviously. I'm at a season right now where I really am saying, come and see. You want to see how to go long and how to go far? Come and see. Walk with me. Yeah. And what's radical about that idea is, instead of inviting them to a Bible reading plan or a discipleship group, I'm inviting them to live life with me. And that means when I falter, they falter with me and they lift me up. And when they falter, I falter with them and I lift them up. Yeah. And I become stronger because of it. Yeah. And they become stronger when I become stronger, and vice versa.
What I love about that is, and it goes to your point of marketing, but we also, in the same vein, become formulaic about, well, if you just do these 3 things, you're going to make it. And it is that complex where you have to watch it, you have to see it, you have to live it out, you have to walk with people, and that's how you learn. Not that there aren't principles or practices that can be helpful along the way, but it is about that intimacy.
Oh yeah,
walking
absolutely,
together with people, for sure.
Yeah, I think that Jesus shied away from formulas, and I think that formulas work to get people to the outer circumference of things. But when you want to get them to where their real life soul change, it needs to be life on life. It needs to be in the nuance. I think God is the God of the nuance. I don't think he's just the God of the suburban marketplace or the city. He's the God of the individual streets of our hearts and our lives. And I think that the church is going to be the most effective. You will be the most effective at just staying the course when you invite others with you.
I love that. So what? And maybe there's no talking about formulas. Maybe there's no formula for this, but it some people who have been around the journey for a while, they've tried groups, they've tried accountability partners and all that, and gotten burned along the way, gotten hurt, disappointed, and they're like, I don't know that I want to enter into that risk place again. What would you say to people who've been kind of in that space?
Yeah, I mean, Jesus was crucified, number one. So it's probably not going to get that bad, hopefully. I think that the whole idea of accountability, I mean, let's just talk about that word for a second. I mean, that might as well be a cuss word in our culture today, because we don't want to be held accountable. That's the thing. We don't want to be hurt. Mm-hmm. Accountability, by definition, is I have the ability to hurt you if you don't do what you said you were going to do. We don't like that idea. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to like it today, because I can consume any church I want to consume, and I can consume it until it holds me accountable, and then I can move to the next one. And so we don't have to be accountable. Yeah. I think about discipleship. I mean, discipleship by definition, as Jesus would have had it, it says, he has conversations with guys like, okay, go sell everything you have and then come and follow me. Because that discipleship requires discipline. And for that particular individual, his discipline was that he was greedy, or his lack of discipline is that he was greedy. And so Jesus was able to say, unless you can do that, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. And I think that the way that we're doing church today is everyone come in. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much you want to commit. You want to do this much commitment or this much commitment or this much commitment. That's fine. And as soon as I offend you, you're going to go somewhere else. So I'm going to be scared to offend you. Mm. And I think by definition, I think we need to be willing. I need to be willing to be offended. I need to open up my heart and my life to someone who's close. Now, I'm not saying to everybody, right? I'm not saying like, go hit up the DMs right now and let me know how you feel. But I'm saying that there is a circle of people in my life that I'm walking and doing life with, and I've given them permission to hurt me. I've given them permission to hold me accountable. Mm. And it's because I want to look more like Jesus. Yeah. And if Jesus was perfected in suffering, and he's Jesus, how much more me? Yeah. How much more me? Yeah, that's good. And so, I think just like anything in this life that's worth having is difficult. And you want to look like Jesus. That is the most difficult path.
And one of the things that I'm thinking about as you're saying this is that you have to almost evaluate then at that point, well, when you talk about your hurts and you talk about your disappointment with people, what's really behind that? Like, what was it that got hurt? Like, maybe you ought to have been challenged and that didn't feel very good. Right. And so you're going to I'm bolting because I didn't want that. Right. So, and sometimes people just use that as an excuse to escape what they know they really need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely true.
Something else you talked about when we were together that I found fascinating, because I've been kind of noodling on it for a couple days now, is this idea of what you expose yourself to and how much of it you expose yourself to. So we were talking about our quote-unquote devotional time and kind of how we define that, and got to start your day with devotions. That's going to keep you on track. But you kind of blew that out of the water a little bit. And talk to me about how you describe that with folks.
Yeah, I don't have a devotional in the morning. That's not a way that I live my life. Because what happens when you do that, and I understand that there's a biblical pattern of it. I understand meditate on the word. I understand Jesus gets up at 4 a.m. and he's going hard. Actually, he's usually going hard in prayer is what he's doing, because the scriptures are only at the synagogue. But I think the idea here is that we can check that box, and then that becomes as far as we can go in that day, into a deeper understanding of who God is and what he's saying through his word. Mm-hmm. What I want to do is I actually want to learn how to, instead of just have a devotional time with Jesus, I want to be constantly uploading Jesus's worldview to my worldview. I want his worldview to be the way that I see the world. And so I want to interact with every situation through the lens of how Jesus would interact with it. And how do you do that? You've got to know Jesus. You've got to know him intimately. And so it's a mind change. Instead of let me just scratch 10 minutes down in the morning to start my day right, I'm actually going to be thinking through the scriptures all day long. And I'm going to be in pockets of time consuming not just Bible reading, but I want to consume conversations about God. I want to consume conversations about what this Genesis passage meant, or what did Jesus mean when he said this. And I think we live in such a time right now where we really can get that all day. And then, as you know, we're holding each other accountable, real, true accountability. Now we're inviting other people in. We're saying, come and see. And now we're willing and able to spar with each other about these ideas. And all of a sudden, we're sharpening our worldview, and it's starting to look more like Jesus through dialogue all day.
Yeah, and like you said, we have access to all kinds of resources, and so it's about making certain choices when you run. What are you listening to, or when you're on your way to work? What are you paying attention to? You know? And so,
absolutely.
And by the way, you are you going to get back to your podcast? Are you going to be doing that here shortly?
Yes, I am.
Because he has a really great theology and worship podcast that I have always enjoyed. But he was on a bit of a pause. But you're going to get back to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything in life needs to be seasonal.
Yeah.
You know, and so you know, I think that this last year has been me figuring out what do I need to do, what do I really need. And so that was something I was able to put down for a little bit, but, you know, I think it might come back. Who knows?
Yeah, come on.
We'll see.
Announce it here.
You don't want me to announce it here.
All right. So last portion of that question. So you talked about some things you're telling other people about, inviting them into the journey with you, saturating your heart and life into the scriptures and to his truth so that your worldview becomes like his. Is there anything else that you're doing, like personally for yourself, that's effective these days? Yeah,
I think that you can't understand how important it is to just be physically active. It's so important. Man, we have all day, we have these negative thoughts and emotions, lies from the enemy, lies from our past, childhood woundings that are trying to poison us from the inside out. And just the idea of sweating is actually literally removing toxins from your body. And I think that when people realize that they can do hard things, then they're more apt to do hard things. Yeah. And I think to just diet, exercise, and not by diet, I don't mean go do Whole30 for 30 days, but actually change the way you live. See how this body reacts the best to which foods. You know, I just think of the idea of food. I could go hard on all these things. You're going to have to just slow me down here. But just the idea of food is consuming what God has made to be. It's this physical stuff that becomes body, that produces spiritual thoughts and connection and conversation with God. So the things we choose to intake on all levels have such a big part in how we interact with the world and how we become one with the world ultimately. Yeah. And so what you consume is trying to become one with you. And so just understand that relationship. When I eat a cheeseburger, I'm becoming one with that cheeseburger. It's becoming part, it is turning into body, and it's outflowing in me being tired later and not being able to engage with my kids. And just understand that what you consume, you're becoming one with. And that's true physically and in the spiritually. If you just start to see the world that way, maybe, I love that. Maybe you I think a really important thing to do is get a vision. Get a vision. Yeah. You know, who do you want to be next week? Cool. But who do you want to be in 5 years? Yeah. Actually, what do you want your kids to say about you on the day of their wedding day? What do you want your grandkids to say about you when you're going to be with Jesus? How do you want to be remembered? And you think as far ahead as you can and the loftiest dream that you can, and say, okay, what kind of man, what kind of woman is that sustains, what kind of life do they have to sustain for that goal to be accomplished? Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think it's as simple as choosing God in every moment. Yeah. I think every day you have this choice between you, God and not God. And it really can boil down to choose God. Choose the thing that is God. Choose the thing that will draw you closer. It doesn't have to be, you know, I'm going to listen to K-Love on the way home. No, go listen to Coldplay. Who cares? But, man, think about the artistry of God as he, you know, wove Chris Martin together to produce something like whatever it is. I mean, I think you can find God in everything. Yeah. And I think that we've marketed him and we've got him in this box, literally this church building, and that's where you find God. No, God's in all of us. Like Jesus is living on the inside of us, and the Holy Spirit, as we commune together, is speaking with our spirit and is sharpening our senses. And I think it's about just seeing him and being aware of him and being present with him. Amen. And then, you know, I think for me, really this last year has been a year of just sinking into the season that I'm in. I'm in this season now. I'm not a pastor right now. For the first time since 2007, I'm not a pastor. Man, what a blessing that is. What a blessing.
Well, I'm
it
going to
is.
argue with that because I think that everything that you describe that you're doing is pastoral.
Sure. I mean, it is exercising the gift of shepherd, which is what that is.
Yeah.
But I'm stripping away things from my identity that I no longer need.
Yeah.
I no longer need that title, Tyson creative pastor, Tyson worship pastor. I can just be Tyson guy, who's running hard after Jesus and who's looking at people who want to come and say, come and see. That's it. I don't need you to tithe. I don't need you to come to an event. I don't need you to buy anything from me except a guitar if you want. I just want to live life with people. And I do think that the way I did church before is that all my relationships had an agenda. And that's tough to come to grips with. But I needed something out of every single person I was in relationship with. I needed them to produce. I needed them to sing. I was doing creative stuff. I needed them to play their instrument. I needed them to make their videos. I needed them to be excellent. And so I was in a relationship with them to get something out of them. And this season has been a season of God. It's been a season of repentance and drawing near to people just because they're people and they're God's image bearers and the Holy Spirit lives inside them. And I don't need anything from them. I just want to give to them and love on them. And so, life is seasonal. And if you can learn to recognize what season you're in, you're gonna do fine.
Yeah.
And if you can learn to recognize what season is coming, you're gonna be prepared for anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, I'm going to close with that thought because that's awesome. I am so grateful. It was a bit of a risk for you to come and join me here. I appreciate you taking it, and
I'm happy to be here.
I'm really thankful for it. You did a great job today.
I got nothing to lose. Literally nothing.
Well, anyway, I appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for it. You had a lot of good things to say, and if you're open to it, sometimes people will comment or ask questions posting this, and so if you wouldn't mind cycling back, and if somebody asks a question for
Sure.
it, can I send it your way?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Tyson. God bless
Thanks
you
for having me.
in all your adventures here.
Thanks.
And thanks for joining us.